In this video, we're covering 5 ways nonprofits treat volunteers like kindergartners. Let's do it.
Hello, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because we believe a better world needs healthier nonprofits. Now, we work with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of different leadership types, and there are a few things that we have seen that
drive us up a wall.
It just drives us crazy. We look out, we're like, what are you guys doing? And one of these big things is when nonprofits treat their volunteers like they're 5 years old. Which, I mean, I've heard people say you have to lead people like they're your own kids. And there's a difference between leading people with care, like their family, and leading people as if they're 5 and their family, and you're like frustrated at them already. So these should be pretty fun to talk about.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why this happens is because volunteer situations where nonprofits are bringing in leadership that is also volunteer, they sometimes feel like they need to scrape the bottom of the barrel just to get people who have enough time to do a thing. And when they do that, they sacrifice a lot of leadership qualities and social norms and things that, you know, a lot of normal people would say, this is not a person who should be in charge.
Yeah.
That maybe they're disorganized, or maybe they just don't have great social skills, and they end up being in charge because they're the ones who had the most time available to do the thing.
I also think this happens because sometimes the paid leaders are looking at the volunteers and they're like, I don't have the time to figure out how different people need to be led. So I'm just going to lead in a way everyone understands. And that ends up being like lowest common denominator,
which is not great. So these are 5 things not to do and to watch out for in your organization, and maybe even do a self-check and look at yourself and say, man, am I doing these things? Because when you're dealing with volunteers, they are not incentivized to stick around when you treat them poorly. They are just like, oh, okay, I'm out of here. And they'll, they might not say that this is the reason why they're leaving, but this is the reason they're leaving.
Now, my hope for you is, as you're watching this, as we say these, you're like, what? People do this? Because that's our hope. Like I can't believe that we've experienced this, but they're kind of funny. So hopefully you're more on that side.
So number 1, a way that nonprofits sometimes treat their volunteers like kindergartners is that they shush them. Shh. Hey, shh, 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 shh. Oh, I hate that. I hate that so much. I hate it when anybody does it, but especially in a situation where it's like, hey, listen here. I am here to help you. At least have the decency to be like, hey, we need to be a little quiet right now.
Yeah.
Like, just treat me like an adult, not like a barking dog.
I was, so we're nonprofit consultants. I was in a meeting. The meeting had finished. And the people in the meeting were kind of chattering as they were starting to get up. And one of the people looked around and went, shh.
Oh.
And I lost it. Like, I was so mad.
I mean,
I kept my composure.
Right.
But I had this moment
internally.
Excuse me? Did you just shush me? You shushed me. I haven't been shushed before that point in a very long time. I never thought I'd be actually shushed again. And for the people in this room, this was people who were like, they're successful, full-time jobs, committed to this organization, wanting to see it succeed. There so that it can succeed. They all have they all have
families and kids. So they're like full-grown but adults.
Yeah. And I think the age range from maybe 30-ish up to 50-ish. And we all got shushed.
So have you ever been, the question is, and we're curious how often this happens, have you ever in a nonprofit situation, viewers of this video, have you ever been shushed? Put it down in the comments. We want to hear that story and commiserate with you.
Yeah, better option to this is if someone needs to say something, you stand up and say, hey, excuse me, I have one more thing to say. People understand. People want to give that attention and they want to give that respect. But if you treat people as if they don't want to, it automatically makes them not want to listen to you.
Right. This is the difference between commanding respect and demanding respect. Demanding respect is, shh, I'm in charge, quiet. And commanding respect is like, hey, excuse me, everybody. I got one more thing that we got to cover real quick. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, I will give you respect instead of you like forcibly taking it and saying shh.
Ugh,
Makes me want to just like shush them and slap them in the face. Oh gosh, so bad. Okay, here's another one. Number 2.
Snapping your fingers. You should. I don't know how to
Like,
snap.
hey, you, hey. I'm like, oh my gosh, do people actually do this?
Yeah.
I know.
Seen it.
I
We've
know.
seen
But when
it.
I see it, I'm so, like, I gaslight myself. I'm like, that can't have just happened.
Like,
That did not
people
just
don't talk
happen.
to each other like this, right? Like, this is not what we're doing, people.
Humans don't.
Like,
yeah.
Come on.
I don't know what else to say about that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
If
if
you-
you have to do that to someone and get in their face with that kind of attitude, with that kind of action, with anything else, you have not earned the leadership right for the person you're talking to.
Right.
They are ignoring you for a reason, and it's not because they are incapable of listening. Chances are they just don't respect you. And respect will not be gained by acting like that. And and it's just going to lose the
Yeah,
volunteers.
you're torpedoing even more trust at that point. You're in a downward spiral, and you got to remember that, levels of leadership, the very lowest level is you have a title, you have a position of leadership, but the next level up is permission. You actually have to earn the leadership that people are willing to allow you to have.
Yeah.
Right? And by doing this, you're not.
Now, depending on the background too, that's something that can be like even more offensive to certain people, depending on what their background is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you want to be like, it's unnecessary. Don't
Right.
do
There
it.
are way better ways to
But
do
you
it.
need to know that something that might seem small to you could actually be enough for you to lose someone who's a professional in an industry who's helping you out.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
Number 3, illogical logic. Have you guys ever been in a situation where your boss is like, okay, here's how we're going to do something, and you're thinking, this is the dumbest possible way to do something, and it's totally illogical, and they don't really have like a good defense for it, and maybe you don't even say like, hey, this is a dumb idea, but this is what we're talking about, where the leadership makes a decision, and you're just like, this is so dumb. Like,
Yeah.
there's no good logic behind this.
I've seen this in situations where there'll be like a volunteer working on a task and they need to work with leader A to get it done. But for whatever reason in the hierarchy, they're under leader B
Yeah.
the majority of the time. But there's this one task that's weird. And leader A looks at it and they're like, well, technically you're under leader B. So if you need a question answered from me, you need to talk to leader B, who will talk to me. And they're like, the chain of command rules all. Like, but it's illogical. Like, the question is going to take 4 conversations to have, this person to leader B, to leader A, to leader B, back to the person, when it might just be a quick pop by the office and say, hey, did you want red or blue? Like, it doesn't, like, there are just things like that your volunteers are looking at, and they're saying, like, this doesn't make sense. And the minute someone says this doesn't make sense, as a leader, you need to step back and say, what part of this isn't adding up? And be able to formulate an actual thing. Because if you just say, no, I think it does.
Then you just like solidified yourself as the one who made a stupid decision.
Yeah.
Now, you might have actually good reasons for them to use the hierarchy. Like maybe you need to be able to concentrate as the leader. You need to be able to concentrate and focus on what you're doing. And you can't have like tons of little decisions coming at you all the time. Like, then explain that. But a lot of times I see this happen. It's just hierarchy for hierarchy's sake. Like, successful organizations have strict hierarchies and it's a corporate structure. And so we're going to do it like this. And it's like, there are 3 people on your staff. Calm down. You can have somebody interrupt you a little bit and say, hey, I need this thing answered quick. And you're not doing anything. Like, it's just stupid. It's like people just puffing themselves up and say like, well, we have a hierarchy. we have an org structure.
You have an org structure. You are the only staff member.
Yeah.
And you can't.
And that's just one example. But just be thinking through, like, are there things that your organization is doing and that you're doing as a leader that are making you look like an illogical buffoon? Stop it. Get some help.
Get some help. All right. Number 4, the phrase just be nice or just be kind, and assuming that all conflicts within the volunteers are petty. I've heard this both when I was in an organization and working with organizations where a volunteer will have an issue with another volunteer, and the leaders just assume that it's people who are just being petty, just being jealous, they just can't get along, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And so they're like, hey, you need to be nice to each other. You need to treat each other with kindness. You need to just, get past your stuff and just work together. And sometimes you might end up with someone who has a personality like that. But for the most part in nonprofit, you have a whole group of people around who are all running at the same cause together. And that typically alleviates the majority of the pettiness. And I have seen organizations where it's like, no, the reason that they're having conflict is because one of them is doing something unethical. And the other one is trying to figure out if the organization is supporting unethical behavior. Right. And so it sounds like a little conflict, but the leadership is just like, just be nice to each other. It's like, just be nice. This issue could crumble the organization if it comes out. And it might not be a big deal, but it might be enough that it's rubbing someone the wrong way. And you need to figure out, is this petty or is there something real here?
Yeah, when there are conflicts, you need to investigate and figure out what's really going on at the depth and then make a good decision as a leader to help alleviate or solve the conflicts. Conflicts in a volunteer situation, again, a lot of this stems from people running a nonprofit and a volunteer team like it's a set of employees, where when you pay someone a salary, they're going to be willing to put up with a conflict that's happening with a coworker or something petty, or they're going to put up with a boss that snaps their fingers at them or shushes them because it's like, you know what? That was really frustrating and I'm super mad about it, but I made $1,000 last week, so I don't care,
I'm kind of good with it.
I exactly. So that's the trade-off, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people typically, they don't think like, I'm getting paid to do the part of my job I love. No, they would do that part probably maybe for free. They're getting paid to do the part of the job they hate. Yep. In volunteer world, they're not getting paid. So when they have experiences that make them go like, what a jerk, or I can't believe they're not doing anything about this conflict that's happening with this person, or I'm getting shut, they'll check out, they'll quit, they'll leave, they'll start ghosting your texts or your phone calls when you're calling for volunteer opportunities. You might not even know what's going on because they're also not incentivized to like tell you what's happening either.
Another thing with this is when it's a series of volunteers who all have a similar issue with the single staff person. Ooh, a lot of times nonprofit staff, like you kind of watch each other's backs, and we understand it's hard work that you're doing. You're all kind of in it together. It's thankless work. That's a good word for it. And so sometimes if a volunteer comes up against a staff member and they have a little complaint, the natural inclination is to side with the staff member, and really you should be investigating it, but it makes sense from a relational standpoint that you're going to naturally trust the person that you've built more trust with over time a little bit more. A big issue comes into play when there's a constant churn every couple months of different volunteers having the same kind of issue with the staff member. And because it's not being looked at or addressed, the pattern is being missed. Because what happens is all the volunteers know. They all know the staff member no one wants to work with, no one wants to get caught next to when they're in a bad mood, whatever the case may be. And the volunteers know the organization's just going to tell us to shut up and be nice. But it just breeds distrust. So even if you have a natural inclination to side with a certain party, you need to still investigate and have your radar up and watch for patterns. Maybe it was a one-off thing and there was a bad day and an apology needs to be made, but it was just one time. Maybe it's something that's more consistent going on behind the scenes, that they're just doing a really good job at keeping kind of chill. And the whole, just be nice, just get along, it's not a big deal. It might actually be a big deal. And you need to know as a leader that you've looked into it.
Absolutely. Number 5, not explaining decisions and just saying, because I said so, or because I'm in charge.
Yeah. I was once talking to a nonprofit leader who was running a certain aspect of their organization in an interesting way. And I straight up brought statistics and said, this is ineffective. You're lowering the amount that you're going to be able to get done over time because of X, Y, and Z. And they looked at me and they said, but I'm the boss and I like it that way. And that was interesting because I was like, you asked me why this isn't working.
Ineffective?
Yeah.
That doesn't breed trust.
They like it ineffective. Like their personal preference was for a system that in the last 15, 20 years has been proven to not be as effective.
Yeah.
And so we didn't work with them as clients going forward because there was a certain point where it's like, we would love to help, but if the boss's attitude is always because I said so,
Or I'm always right.
I'm always right, I
Yep.
don't take responsibility, I'm in charge, you need to support me, I don't need to support you, any of those attitudes is enough to start to realize this organization doesn't care necessarily about growth as much as they care about the leadership sitting on top of whatever the organization is doing.
Yep. So you want to watch out for those. Now, if this has kind of piqued your curiosity and you're thinking a lot about volunteerism and you're like, you know what, I could use some more volunteers, we actually have a video to help you do just that. It's on the screen right now, and we'll see you over there.